I'm Jake Monaco, the composer for Be Cool Scooby-Doo, and you're listening to a podcast named Scooby-Doo.
Yeah!
The gang's all here, they're on the case, and there's no ghost that they wouldn't face, 'cause they dig it, Scooby-Doo. Yeah, they dig it, Scooby-Doo.
Hey gang, and welcome to another great episode of a podcast named Scooby-Doo. Now in this episode, I'm going to be featuring an interview with someone who I think if you could give anyone the qualifier of being a long-awaited guest on the show, that honor could be bestowed to Be Cool Scooby-Doo story editor, Jon Colton Barry. Jon and I did an interview a little while ago, probably a couple months ago now, but due to some technical difficulties and just a desire on both of our parts to kind of do it again, do a little better, we've been putting it off. But scheduling issues have made it so that we're probably not going to get a chance to do that for, again, another couple of months. And I decided that I've been promising this and I'm just sitting on this conversation, so I cleaned up some of the technical difficulties. I'm going to be putting it out in what looks like about 2 parts. I try to keep the show down to a manageable level in that sort of 30 to 40 minute listening time range. It feels like a good running time for a podcast, and I've really been trying to stick to that with recent episodes. So one now and one probably in a couple weeks, kind of the way I split up last month's episodes. The only real casualty from how I was originally going to present this interview is the commentary that Jon and I did for Mystery 101. I'm going to hold off on that. I'm not going to post that. There were some things technically that I couldn't fix. We just weren't really happy with how some things kind of turned out. I know we could do better, and I think Jon is eager to do it again. Just put something out there that'll be really fun to listen to. So apologies for that. I know as a listener, I would have been looking forward to it. As the creator of this podcast, the commentaries are one of my favorite things to do, so kind of breaks my heart to leave it out as well. But it's not like it's never going to happen. We're just putting it off for a bit, and we will revisit, most likely with another full-length interview with Jon, and we'll squeeze in another commentary. But until then, this conversation with Jon was... every conversation with everybody is fun to do, but it was really nice. It was really nice to hear some of the behind-the-scenes stuff for the Be Cool Scooby-Doo show. We haven't really heard a lot about the development, the reasoning for some of the choices that they've made, and the show has taken a lot of crap from a lot of people for its look and its style of humor, and it's just nice to hear Jon kind of talk a little bit about those development stages. There's also a goodly chunk where we talk about the backgrounds of the characters and developing the characters the way that they did, which I think is kind of cool. And if you're a fan of the show and have been dying for some behind-the-scenes info, I hope this is something you can really sink your teeth into. I certainly enjoyed being a part of the conversation. And with that, I really have nothing else to add, and I'm probably just keeping you even longer from getting this interview that you've probably been waiting for. So I'll cut it off there. Enjoy part 1 of my exclusive interview with Jon Colton Barry. And I will see you, as always, on the other side.
Guys, this interview is important. Please don't ruin it for me by being strange.
All right, so I'm good on this end. You can hear me fine. Everything is levels are good. All that stuff.
Everything's good, yeah.
All right,
so
cool.
we can just jump into questions and see where we go.
All right, let's do it.
How did you come to Scooby-Doo? Were you a viewer when you were a kid?
Yeah. Like most, it's a show that's been on almost 50 years, and growing up, we would watch Saturday morning cartoons, and the original Scooby-Doo Where Are You series is the one that I watched the most. I by the time it got into Scooby Dum and the Southern guy with that middle period around Laugh Olympics, Scooby-Doo as an entity just changed so dramatically from what it originally was, and that's really been the only consistent thing about Scooby-Doo is change from one series to the next. It has been very, very different, removing characters, adding characters, and so to me, Scooby-Doo means 1969 to about 1972. Don Knotts and it's Phyllis Diller. That those strange
The Scooby-Doo movies.
Yeah, the Sonny and Cher show. Those were the Scooby-Doos that were on reruns when I was a kid, and that's how I sort of defined Scooby-Doo, because then it became Laugh Olympics and those sorts of things, the Hanna-Barbera characters together. And by the time Scrappy was brought in, I had moved on to, watching Marx Brothers films and early Woody Allen movies and Monty Python. That became my Saturday morning cartoons, encouraged by my uncle and family members. I got into sort of very different sort of comedy and very different sort of viewing habits. So I sort of left Scooby-Doo back there. And what was funny was when Zach and I first approached, this new incarnation of Scooby-Doo, we had these very fond memories of the original series, the classic Scooby-Doo. And we went back and watched all of them, and we're just aghast at what a horrible show it was. I mean, in a nostalgic, like, comfort food way, they're great. It's Scooby-Doo, and it's all the things we love, and all those sound cues, the bump, bump, bam, bam, all those great, all of those great things we remember. But the writing and the animation and sort of the well, how did he make the spaceship effect? Well, he just shot a film projector at the sky, but onto what? I mean, there's no, like, none of it really made any sense. It seems hastily sort of put together and ill-conceived in a lot of ways. Researching it, I discovered that originally they were supposed to be a rock band, and they, I guess, Josie and the Pussycats, there were some other things that were coming out, so they removed the music angle from it, but just kept them on tour. So they're basically on tour solving mysteries, but they were originally supposed to be a band,
right?
Which explains something. And also the show was not about the dog. I forget the name of the guy in charge, but
Fred Silverman.
Fred Silverman with the the Sinatra reference of Scooby-Dooby-Doo, and they ended up naming the series after the dog character, who really was never the main character, never meant to be the main character. And what I discovered from writing the show is not a good main character. He's not really a good character to drive a story, because with Shaggy and Scooby, what you find is you have two main characters who do not want to be in your story. At all points, they don't want to be there. They want to leave. Which is why
those middle years series always seemed kind of awkward, because they were weighted too heavily into that comedy, because they were eliminating all of the straight people.
Right, which was another bizarre thing that we noticed was, Warner Brothers had just done Mr. Incorporated, which a lot of people loved. A lot of people loved that show. It was a much more intense and sort of frightening show. I don't know if I'd let my young child watch it. Some of those monsters were pretty scary. It got pretty heavy.
It was kind of riffing off of like the 80s horror.
Yeah, and it was definitely for an older demographic and a more pop culture, and they had that sort of longer arcs, and they had the inner gang romance stuff, which was for me a little awkward. Velma felt that she was being a little aggressive with Shaggy in an awkward, uncomfortable sort of way. Like it just, they smoothed it out a little bit, but a lot of people liked that. A lot of people, it was certainly a bold experiment. And certainly, I give them big, kudos for trying something. But what they did basically was Buffy the Vampire Slayer-ized Scooby-Doo. They turned Crystal Cove into the Hellmouth basically, and had the gang stay put, and all the this overarching story and all that sort of stuff, and a lot of really good, interesting ideas went into it. But Warner Brothers decided that this time out they wanted to go with something that was, they had said that Mr. Incorporated was 75% scary, 25% humor. They wanted to reverse that. And so they hired Zach Moncrief, who is a dear friend, and he was a director on Phineas and Ferb with me. And we worked together on a lot of stuff. We actually worked together on the first Emmy-nominated episode of Phineas, and we did the Christmas special together. We did a lot of really good work together. We loved working together. We always paid attention to the same things. We always shared the same aesthetic. We always cared maybe too much about certain things. There's a tendency occasionally in kids animation to have it's just a cartoon sort of attitude, where you might cut corners or be lazy about something. But we always took everything very, very seriously, and so when he got the job to run and executive produce a new Scooby-Doo, and they said, we want it to be smart and funny like Phineas, he gave me a call, and we sat down and watched those, and realized, even in Mystery Incorporated, that basically nobody had ever given Fred, Velma, and Daphne personalities. They never actually had points of views as characters. Even Mystery Incorporated, Fred liked traps. Daphne liked Fred. But that's not really a personality. It's not, that's not, you can't, unless you know who a character is, who they have a crush on really doesn't really mean anything, and because they wanted a comedy, our first, goal was to try to turn Scooby-Doo into a comedic ensemble and have the whole gang have very, very clear, funny, individual, and unique comedic personalities and points of views. And that's something that no one had ever done before, which was surprising to us. What they would do is just remove Fred, Velma, and Daphne, or remove the characters and say, oh, no one cares about those characters, as opposed to asking, well, why don't people care about those characters? It's because they're not characters. They're just sort of avatars for the leader, the pretty one, the smart one. They didn't actually have points of views where you could say, oh, in this situation they would do this or that. And particularly if you're doing comedy, you need to have a very clear point of view, because anticipation is a large part of comedy. Shaggy and Scooby were the comic relief before, and that if there's going to be something scary or there's food, we can anticipate their behavior, and that adds to the humor of it. So we set about creating comedic personalities for these characters, and that was actually a novel thing. No one had done that before, which again is just bizarre, and hopefully is something that people will think about and continue to do in the future.
When I was talking with Tom about the Daphneisms, or the Daphne du jours, as you guys put it, I was saying, like, a lot of people had responded to them in a way where they thought it sort of made her a joke of the episode kind of thing, but in actual fact, most of the things that she was doing, it was giving her more agency than she'd ever had in like any previous series, and a lot of the things that she could do were like really interesting things. They weren't just, weird puppets and wearing a beard. It was she can fly a plane and she knows all this stuff about aliens and conspiracies, and it gave Daphne so much more to do.
It was very strange to me when people would say, "Oh, they made Daphne stupid," because she was far from stupid. She was actually extremely intelligent. She just didn't care what anybody thought about her.
She was eccentric.
She was very eccentric, and she there's more backstory there. She comes from a life of privilege. We sort of thought of her as a Rapunzel-like character, that the wealth and privilege that she grew up in was sort of her tower that she was trapped in, and now that she's out and about with her friends, she's sort of experiencing life and exploring and enjoying sort of with childlike wonder a lot of the things she didn't get to do when she was young. We get into this a little bit more in season 2. There's references to her mother, but she definitely, had a strict conservative upbringing, and she's sort of rebelling against that. But the main important thing with Daphne, what I wanted to do was to have nothing about her character, no adjective really that you would use to describe her character would have anything to do with her gender whatsoever. That every line, everything that she does in every episode, she could be a male character or a female character, that wouldn't matter. I want to remove this whole the pretty one thing from her. And in fact, there are a couple moments when, in one episode, the Bradford character, says, "You look stunning," and she says, "Yeah, that's me, set for stun, pew pew." She just sort of dismisses it out of hand and makes a joke out of it and plays down that aspect of it because she's just not interested in that. That's not,
And Gray's delivery of that was so great.
Her delivery on everything was spectacular. I mean, because what was really interesting was that the characters. I mean, Gray as a person is very, very much like the Daphne we created. It was not a stretch for her. She is personally very, very, very funny. She's extremely witty, and she is eccentric, and she is a lot of fun. She is not unlike the Daphne from Be Cool Scooby-Doo, so she instantly got what we were doing with her. And that sort of from Mystery 101, that line when the puppet, like, "I have a weird accent now, blah blah blah." She just nails that stuff because she just understood that character, because it's she was a 60-70% more unhappy childhood away from being that person, probably. And Kate Micucci also, came in new to Velma and brought so much of her sense of herself to the character. Originally, we had made Velma. It was impossible for her to lie. Was one thing we were trying to do. She's sort of socially inept, has social anxieties, isn't very good with people. But we were trying to do this thing where she basically could not physically lie. So if someone said, "Are you supposed to be here?" she would struggle with going, no. She would fight to try to get an untruth out there.
Is that kind of did you sort of touch on that in the Party Like It's 1889, where Fred's like, "Oh, and you're Velma and you can't break rules"?
Yes. That became sort of part of her character. That she loves rules. Rules are wonderful things, because then she always knows what to do, and she loves school and homework, and she's a goody-goody, but we had added this layer of this sort of pathological inability to not be able to lie, but then we had to sort of find those moments, and it just sort of fell away. Just like originally in the first episode, we mentioned Daphne being danger prone, and we had put a couple of moments of clumsiness in that episode, which then we took out apart from the first thing with the van. because we realized we just didn't need it. She had so much character. She had so much more. Clumsiness isn't a personality trait, you know, and it just wasn't giving us anything. She was so much more interesting now that the whole clumsy, danger-prone thing just sort of fell away from Daphne, and that was just a natural, organic sort of evolution of the series. And you know, we had to work and find places to show Velma's sort of, you know, tactlessness, not really knowing when it's right to tell a white lie and stuff, and occasionally that stuff would have gotten cut. So Velma didn't quite get as dimensional as we originally envisioned her, but Kate brought this vulnerability to Velma. This, you know, she's still brilliant and she's, you know, this genius, but she brought this still sort of social innocence and vulnerability to her that made her so lovable to me. And it was very much Kate, you know. The actors just really brought themselves to it. And it was a process of working with them, finding the new gang. The actors are very protective, proprietors of those characters and those roles. You know, Matt Lillard as Shaggy, he's taken over from Casey Kasem, and he takes that very seriously. His stewardship as Shaggy is something that he values. You know, I remember in the early drafts of the first script, Zach and I understood that if we made Shred, Velma, and Daphne into comedy characters, if they were funny, then Shaggy and Scooby, who were the comic relief before, they would need to be elevated comedically, proportionately. Otherwise, we would lose them comedically, you know, because, you know, just food jokes and I'm scared jokes, you know, we knew weren't going to be the same kind of humor we're going to be doing with the rest of the gang. We're going to be doing slightly more modern, slightly more sophisticated, nuanced humor.
I thought it was interesting. I read it was an interview with Iwao Takamoto, and he had commented on the whole Shaggy Scooby food gag thing, and he was always kind of disappointed that became as big as it was. He always thought it was just kind of like a minor gag, and it became such a pivotal part of these characters as far as the way Hanna-Barbera and WB after that sort of saw the franchise and these characters.
We honestly, we tried to get rid of it. We actually had a discussion. We wanted to try to remove the food thing as being a major issue for them. Simply, well, for two reasons. One, I personally just don't find it that funny. I'm hungry. It became the bane of my existence, because in every episode he had to try to find some way to have them eat or to find food, and there's just nothing inherently funny about someone being hungry to me. What we attempted to do, and even in 1969 they did this, Shaggy and Scooby broke the laws of physics constantly. They would you know, jump into a horse trough and start paddling, and it would raise in the air and fly through the sky like a canoe. Or they'd walk into a museum, like where the furniture is on the ceiling upside down, and they'd walk up the walls and sit on. So they were breaking the laws of physics and doing sort of surrealistic comedy back in 1969. And we thought really that was the area, that's the place where we could play with them, where we could do different things with them than the rest of the gang, sort of breaking the fourth wall a little bit. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead was sort of one of our touchstones for them.
Nice.
Sort of the idea that they would be sort of commenting on, while the others were you know, dealing with the mystery, interviewing people, talking, we would see them sort of, you know, like getting focused on other strange things in the scene, or you know, play it a little bit more surreal, a little more fourth wall-y with them. We did some of that stuff. But, you know, what we found was that what was working best for us was just when the gang was rapid fire, you know, dialogue just bouncing off each other, you know.
Did the actors record in the same room, or was it separate?
As often as possible, we always try to get them in the same room because it always sounds better when you're actually playing off your fellow actor. But unfortunately, because it's animation and scheduling is difficult, a lot of times you'll get only one of them can come in, and they just are literally handed a script with just their lines on it, And so if they haven't read the full script, they don't even know the context of these lines. So it can be tricky trying to get what you need, and you don't know what it's going to sound like until you have the whole thing mixed together. So as often as you can, you want to try to get them together, but as often as not, that's difficult to do. Occasionally, you'll get 3 of them together or 2 of them. You do the best you can, but ideally, yes, you want all of them.
I'm curious, you sort of touched on this a few minutes ago when you were talking about Matthew and Kate. With the exception of Kate, all the cast members have been doing these characters for some time. Frank, of course, doing it since the beginning. And they've been through a lot of different iterations of these characters. How did they react when they got these characters and this version?
Well, I think that for Frank it was the most challenging, only because he had been doing a very, very specific Fred for 45 years. Even Fred and Mystery Incorporated was still Fred. He just was a little dopier and trap obsessed. And our Fred is sort of a control freak, and we, in creating the characters, we started with Fred as sort of the cornerstone, the leader, and what we did was basically put engines, is what we called them, into the characters. And our model for Fred was young Gene Wilder, from Young Frankenstein in particular. We thought that sense of trying, he in that movie he wanted to be Frankenstein. He wanted to distance himself from the craziness in his blood. He wanted to stay in control. He wanted to be thought of as a serious scientist and doctor. And we sort of put that onto Fred. And in my mind, when I was writing Fred, I was writing Gene Wilder. I was writing a young Gene Wilder. Through the alchemy of the written word, then going through the voice acting and through the animation, what came out on the screen was this wholly other thing. You can't really see the Gene Wilder. There are moments maybe where you might be able to see it if you know about it. But
yeah, when I was talking to Tom, he had mentioned that, and I was like, wow, I never would have called that out, but now that he said it, I was like, I see it.
Yeah, young Gene Wilder is one of my favorite all-time comedic actors, and the idea was that he takes his job as leader very, very seriously, because it's dangerous. Life and death decisions are on his shoulders, and the gang need to respect him and need to think of him as a capable leader, or they're in danger. And so we sort of built it mathematically to work that way, that Fred's trying to remain in control. So if the other characters are out of control, that means they're being funny, which means Fred is being funny because he's trying to get them back into control. And so it all sort of began with Fred, and it was just a very different Fred than what Frank had done before. And also, I write a lot of dialogue. I'm a pretty dialogue-heavy writer, but my dialogue is meant to be read extremely fast. And it took a while. It took a few episodes for the actor and Colette Sunderman, our brilliant voice director, to actually fully understand how fast we actually needed them to be talking. And because the actors want to get say the lines and get into it, but things needed to be boom 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 boom, and so that was the main adjustment for them, was just speeding everything up. but I don't think they really had a problem with the changes in the characters themselves. Not that they discussed with me so much. I had one discussion with Matthew Lillard, which was very enlightening, where I was sort of whining about a line. I Groucho Marxed Shaggy a little bit, because Shaggy was always a jokester. He was always joking around, but his jokes were mostly puns, in 1969. And so I thought I would just sort of sharpen Shaggy's sense of humor, make it a little bit more pointed, and I was sort of bemoaning a couple of lines that we were told, no, Shaggy would never say that, by Warner Brothers, and Matthew said, well, as far as he was concerned, Shaggy and Scooby are the entry points for the younger children. They are hungry, they are scared of monsters. They can relate to Shaggy and Scooby. So if Shaggy and Scooby are too sharp and too sarcastic and too Groucho, the anarchy and sort of, complete destruction that the Marx Brothers in their early heroic sort of phase represent. If they were too much that, it might ruin or somehow, tarnish the innocence and the ability for the younger children to sort of enter the show. And I absolutely respected and appreciated his take on that. I mean, that said, he still appreciated and liked, the still sharper Shaggy that we had. And Scooby also, we found we held him to 4 words. If the joke was so good or the exposition was so necessary, he could go to 5. But you'll notice that Scooby only says 4 words in any dialogue passage. And that became this great restriction. And I actually found the more erudite I made those 4 words, the more sophisticated, or the more, sort of the funnier it became. So Shaggy and Scooby sort of, because of the restrictions put on us, which were you could do whatever you want with the rest of the gang, but Shaggy and Scooby have got to remain basically hungry and frightened, and as we've always known them, so we just sort of goosed up the level of sophistication of their sense of humor, and that made just enough of a difference, I think, that we didn't lose them entirely as comedic characters.
I will say the whole food joke is something that I've grown tired of over the years, and I've just kind of accepted, because it's always going to be there. And seeing it in Be Cool Scooby-Doo, you guys managed to do something with it. I don't know if it was just kind of the level of surreality or absurdity that you injected it with, but I enjoy it on your show in a way that I didn't enjoy it like previously.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, we
And without that, we would not have that vending machine joke, which is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that was a very off the cuff moment. We were actually sitting in a conference room with the head of Warner Brother Animation, and it was sort of an early discussion on exactly what my role in the show was going to be, and we were talking about all the other characters, and they sort of, well, what are you going to do with Shaggy and Scooby? What kind of surreal humor are you going to be doing with them? And I got up and actually just sort of off the cuff acted out that vending machine scene, sort of like, well, something, it could be like this, and I did it with them getting stuck in the monster and run and the machine hopping and stuff like that, and it was a moment of desperate inspiration where I needed to to show them something of value, and fortunately they liked it, and Sean Negagosian, the director, nailed the scene in the episode, and it's just super fun.
I watched the episode last night with somebody who's not a big Scooby-Doo fan and who had never, I don't think she'd ever actually seen an episode of Scooby-Doo, although she was obviously familiar with the property, but that was the moment where there was the guffaw. She very much enjoyed the episode, but that vending machine moment was just kind of pitch perfect.
I'm glad. Thank you. That's, yes. One good moment is, I'll take it. These are tough shows to do. But yeah, that scene came out really well. Very pleased.
And there you have it. That concludes the first part of my exclusive interview with Be Cool Scooby-Doo story editor Jon Colton Barry. The long-awaited interview with Jon Colton Barry. I hope it was worth the wait. I hope you enjoyed it. As I said before, I certainly had a heck of a lot of fun talking to Jon, and it was really nice to get a bit of a behind-the-scenes look at the production and development of that show. Obviously, there's more to come. Probably in the next couple of weeks, I will get that second part up. In the meantime, if you want to check us out or leave any comments or interact with me, I'm available on the Facebook show page. I'm also on Twitter at ScoobyDooCast. I'm on Instagram. I think that's all the social media. I can never remember how many social media platforms I'm actually using anymore. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Yeah, that should be it. I'd love to hear what you think. If you have some good things to say about the show and you get the show off of iTunes, when you're there downloading it or listening, feel free to rate and review the show. It's always great to see a new comment go up in the review section, and 5-star ratings certainly help visibility with podcast ratings and placement in iTunes. So if you love the show, it only takes a second and you'll have my eternal gratitude. And if you leave a comment, I will definitely mention the comment on a future episode of the podcast. So how can you turn that down? That's just too amazing for words. So that brings to a close another fun, great, wonderful episode of a podcast named Scooby-Doo. Thank you so much again for joining me. Your continued support is amazing and makes putting this podcast together even more worthwhile. I should point out I'm going to exit this episode on a little bit of a twist compared to how I usually do. Normally I use the "This is how we solve a mystery" as it appears in the episode Screamadonna, but seeing as how this episode's an interview with Jon, Jon recently posted the original demo for "This is how we solve a mystery" on his SoundCloud page. If you haven't visited Jon's SoundCloud page, what are you doing with yourself? You should go check it out. And this is the same song that I always use, but performed by Jon, and it's really great. And I hope you enjoy it. Take care.
As a manager of Bones Malone, Jasper Kroll had complete control of which Bones had gotten really tired. When Jasper found out he was gonna be fired, thought he'd ruin Bones' comeback with the prima donna. There's more I could say, but I don't really wanna. Come on, how do you do it? Tell him, Velma. Yeah, entertain us in an informative way. Really? Well, okay. Shaggy in the dressing room. He and Scoob found the first big clue, a high-tech wireless microphone that alters someone's pitch, frequency, and tone. And that produces a shriek for which the prima donna is well known. This is how we solve the mystery. This is how we solve the mystery. Notice when the ghost appeared, she flew around instilling fear. Exactly how she did was still unclear, till we saw the broken fabric of the balladeer. His name was Kyle! Kyle! The hovering balladeer! Kyle! Everybody cheer! This is how we solve the mystery. This is how we solve the mystery. Nationless narration's my donation to the art of mystery solving dictation. Here's what the bad guys say when they play where the law forbids. Would have got away with it too if it wasn't for you mad doll and kids.
This is how we solve the mystery.
Bye.